Hey, I'm Jeff and welcome back to another video. About 2 months ago, I did a chop and prop on this pothos because it outgrew the plank. Now it really hasn't done anything since putting it in its new pot. This is exactly what I expected and I'll explain why. I'll leave the link to the chop and prop video somewhere up in the top corner here, but this is actually the plant from the Great Pothos race with Matt from TechPlant. With this plant, I used my plank invention that had the small rooting window. So basically, the plant grew up the plank. There is a rooting window where once the plant reaches that rooting window, I have a little container of moss at the back, and it grew a root system so that when I did the chop and prop, I could just take the top and put it back in the pot. And that's where we are today. I've shown this one a few times, but here is another version of the plank. This is just to kind of show you what I mean. So the plant grows up. The wood plank here grows into the moss. I let it continue to grow, and once I want to do a chop and prop, I can chop somewhere down here. That way the plant will have an established root system. Now, prior to my plank system, I've tried different methods of rooting for a chop and prop. I've placed a container of soil on the front of the plant. That really didn't work. It didn't establish a root system like I had hoped. I've chopped the plant, I've placed it in water, grew a root system, and then put it back in the pot. But it takes several months before you start to see new growth, like upwards of like 6 to 8 months, I think it was, before I started to see any signs of new growth. So this plank is the solution to the rooting problem. So it would grow roots before I made the chop and prop. But the problem with this is the root system can only grow so large in that kind of rooting container at the back. So you can see I still have the sphagnum moss with the roots where it previously rooted. So the goal for the chop and prop is basically to continue these larger leaves. Now this one, the newest leaf, is a little bit smaller than the previous one, but that is kind of expected just because it doesn't have as large of a root system. So what is it doing right now? It is focusing all its energy on establishing a larger root system to sustain new growth. So because I'm extra curious, I actually want to take this out of the pot, and I do have another reason for doing this. I want to place it on one of my new plank versions because there's no rooting window or anything at the top here, so I want to somehow attach my new plank system to this so that when it continues to grow up here, it'll have another rooting window, and then I can just repeat the process and hopefully get larger and larger leaves with each new leaf. This is the next version of the plank system. So here is that rooting window. I'm going to attach a container at the back so that way the sphagnum moss will be on the back and then the roots can grow into that. They are an attachment system, so they do have these wood dowels. And then on this end, I have holes on the top there so I can stack these up. Now right here, I've added these wood dowels so that the plant, as it grows up the plank, can stay in the middle of the plank, because you definitely don't want it to grow off to the side, because then it detaches. And I've actually had one that kind of grew around the back. Now you want the stem to remain attached to the plank. Otherwise, if it becomes detached, then you run the risk of getting smaller leaves. So I want to secure it on the back, something like that. So I might put it in the soil, and then I'm going to screw it into the current plank. And as the plant continues to grow up this plank, it'll eventually attach onto this one, and then I can add an extension piece at the top once it reaches that point. Now, for the sake of science and my general curiosity, as well as content for this channel, we're going to take it out of the pot, see what's done over the last couple months. But I just want to show this right here. It is starting to get a new leaf. So I do run the risk of setting this plant back if I damage any of the roots, but my plan is to just plunk it out of the pot, look at the roots, put it back in, and hopefully disturb it as little as possible. And of course, I'm going to be using my fancy little butter knife, so here we go. So what I'm doing is I just put it in. I try and lift it up a little bit. If I can't, I just push inwards, and that just kind of loosens up any roots that might be attached to the pot. Okay, now I'm just going to pull up, and the whole thing's going to come out. That did not work at all. Okay, interesting. So tons of roots at the back. I thought there was going to be a lot more roots than there is, but you can see one huge chunky root. So it's definitely a much larger root system, but I honestly thought it was going to be like almost like root bound or pot bound. So super interesting. I'll try and leave a picture up in the top corner here of a comparison between what the roots looked like originally to how they are now. I absolutely love looking at roots, but look at this big chunky thing. So super healthy roots. They're all nice white and yeah, no signs of rot or anything like that. I just watered this one yesterday. I was a little bit curious to see how it would do if I left the moss in the pot. So clearly it is liking this way, so it's definitely reached the bottom. The only thing is that it hasn't gone to the front of the plant. Like, it hasn't filled out the front, it's only the back. So interesting. So maybe placement of a plank, because I had it right at the back like this. Maybe I'll pot it up with the plank in the middle. That way there's more room for the roots at the back, because it definitely grew to the bottom, and you can see it's definitely taken the shape of the pot at the bottom, but it has not gone to the front. So that is super interesting, except for this big one here. It's just kind of gone along the bottom of the pot. So I might actually place the plank more in the middle instead of right at the back. So interesting. This is why I like doing little experiments like this, because I can now take this data that I found, the results, and then modify how I place my plants or how I grow my plants. So yeah, that just goes to show you that most likely the plant will not grow roots like in the front. So I'm going to maybe start placing my planks closer to the front of the pot. That way the root system can develop in the back. So I'm just moving that big chunky root. I'm going to move it as far to the front as I can, and then I'm just going to re-add this soil in the pot. Again, I'm going to keep that slight angle at the back, or slightly to the back, just so it can counterbalance the weight of the plank. So I'm just going to literally stuff this back in, and now the roots will have some more growth at the back. So let me know down in the description if you find this type of video interesting as well, like seeing those big chunky roots and all the roots like just at the back. Super interesting to me. And I'm actually kind of surprised that there isn't any like stem rot lower in the pot as well. So I'm glad I took this out, because now I can adjust or change the way that I place my plants on planks in the pot. So this really shouldn't affect the plants, because I didn't have to damage, well, there is really no damage to the roots. So I just want this nice and snug. And then I'll add the other plank onto the back of this one. And then what I'm going to do is, I have a couple other plants, this right here, that I want to add onto a plank as well. So I have a few plant projects to do today, but everything seems nice and stable. I'm just going to poke that down a little bit, and I'm really glad that I took this out. So I just drilled 2 holes, one at the top I added a screw, and this one right here. I'm just attaching these 2 planks, and now it is complete. So this is what it looks like. I got them attached just at the back like that, and then I'll show you what it looks like when I add an extension piece. This Monstera is, yeah, it's really growing, and it's kind of blocking out everything. But here is, I'm just going to move that, the pothos. It's got my plank. Here is the top extension piece. It's attached with those wood dowels, and now it can grow pretty much to the ceiling. Yeah, once it reaches this plank, I can't add another one up top there, so I'm going to have to do a chop and prop, but this is what the setup looks like for now. I'm going to place this beautiful little, I think this is the lemon meringue pothos, on a wood plank. Now it looks like there are 3 separate cuttings. Now the reason why you want to use, or it's better to use a small cutting instead of, you know, like a mature one like the competition pothos, because they have these very young aerial roots. So those white little bumps right there, those are the ones that are going to attach to the plank very easily. Now if you have a more established plant and you have these brown aerial roots, it'll sometimes take time for them to attach, whereas these white ones, they will attach very, very quickly to the plank. So let's take this out of the pot. But I first want to say, with my new plank design, previously I had propagation windows on both ends. As you can see, I modified it to have it on one end. And now I ran into a fairly, I would say, significant find or issue, which I think I will do in another video about my plank system. But for right now, I'm going to use this smaller terracotta pot. I'm going to attach it to the plank. I'll show you how to set it up. So let's take this out of the pot here first. So I'm just going to squeeze the sides, loosen it up, and then dump it out. So really nice roots on this plant. Now, which one did I want? This one right here. I'm just going to loosen it up just to the point where I can isolate. Is it 2 cuttings? So is this 1 cutting? It is 1 cutting. It branched. Okay, so that's what happened. Or can I separate them? No, it is. Okay, so I'm just going to separate these cuttings. It looks like there are 4 cuttings. Or is this? It is a piece. So I'm actually just going to snap that off. So it was branched. But I'm going to separate that, and I want this beautiful variegated leaf to be on the plank. So yeah, it's got some nice roots on here. So I'm going to place these back in the pot. But now I'm going to show you how to set up a small cutting on a wood plank. So the first thing I'm going to do is size up the cutting on the wood plank. Now I want these roots to remain like under the soil. And I'm just going to lightly push the plant up against the plank, something like that. Now, right at that line, I'm going to add some plant Velcro. So I'm just going to bring this down a bit. So something along there, and you definitely don't want it against or securing down one of the leaf petioles. You just want it touching the stem. So something like that. So it's not squishing down any leaf petioles, it's just cinching the stem against the plank. And you can see right here that really white small aerial root that's in contact with the wood plank. So this one will attach really, really quick. And that's exactly what you want. You want it to attach quickly so that it feels safe and secure. And then as it continues to grow up the plank, it will get larger leaves. So I'm just going to add in my little directional support wood dowels. So I'm going to add the other one up top here. So this is how I set up my planks. So now all I have to do is place this in the pot. Now all the roots are on the front. So what I'm going to do for this one is place it just a little bit further back, something like that. Now when I do the chop and prop one and all the roots are at the back of the plank, then I'll place it at the front of the pot. So for this one, oh, lots of adjustments today. So I'm just going to be using this aeroid mix, and I'm just going to dump it in like so, making sure all of those roots are covered up. Okay, so I'm just going to dump it in the back. Some of these larger chunky pieces probably won't fit back there, but I'm just going to poke it all down. This one I want nice and secure, nice and stable. I might give this one just a little bit of water. I watered the other one just a couple days. Actually, I think it was yesterday. So the soil is still pretty damp, but this soil is like bone dry. So I definitely don't want these roots drying out too quick. So something like that. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of water. So super easy process. Just make sure that the plank is upright and in the middle of the pot. So this one I did place slightly at the back because all the roots were at the front. The other one I had to make kind of a game time decision, and I placed the plank a little bit further at the front. So again, this one's angled slightly backwards, but that is pretty much the process of adding a small cutting on a wood plank. So I just gave it a very light watering. Look at that variegation. You can see All those aerial roots are in contact with the plank. The only time I ever water the plank or spray down the plank is when I water the plants. So yeah, I'll set this down probably somewhere over there so it can establish a root system, and then it'll start growing up the plank. So I think that's going to be pretty much it for this video. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. I always appreciate the support. Thanks for watching all my videos. Take care, everyone. Bye.